The Young and the Restless Spoilers. Noah's sudden awakening in the sterile, cold environment of the hospital was disorienting, his head clouded with confusion. He lay there, gasping for air, feeling as if the walls of the room were closing in around him. The faces around him were foreign, distant, and for the life of him, he couldn't place them. He looked to his side, his eyes locking onto Sharon and Nick, who stood there with concern etched across their faces. But their words didn't match the emotions he had expected. They were speaking to him as if he should recognize them, as if he should be grateful, but nothing inside him stirred. He had no memories of them, of his life, or of anything that had led him to this hospital bed. Sharon, with her voice shaking, referred to him as son, a title that felt so unfamiliar to Noah, it nearly made his skin crawl. Nick, standing just behind her, mirrored the same concern, trying to reassure Noah that everything was going to be okay, that they were there for him. But Noah couldn't remember them, he couldn't even remember who he was, let alone the people who claimed to be his family. As the days stretched on, Sienna became a constant presence at Noah's bedside. She came and went, always with a sense of urgency and purpose in her eyes, though Noah wasn't sure of what was going on. The vague discussions between her and the doctors never made sense. Her intentions were clouded, and her motives unclear. But one thing became evident, there was something more at play here than just Noah's recovery. Sienna and Noah seemed to share a secret alliance, something unspoken that lingered in the air like a storm on the horizon. Noah's frustration grew with every passing moment. He couldn't remember anything, nothing about his life, no past, no family. It was as if his entire existence had been wiped clean. But amidst the disorientation and the quiet chatter from those around him, a chilling thought settled in his mind. The people in his life might have had something to do with it. What if his memory loss wasn't an accident? What if someone had intentionally stripped him of his past? The anger simmered within him, making him desperate to reclaim his life, to understand what had happened to him. But as the sun began to rise one fateful morning, Sharon and Nick walked into the hospital room, expecting to find their son resting peacefully in his bed. The room, however, was empty. Panic seized Sharon's chest as she rushed to the bed, her eyes frantically scanning the room. There was no sign of Noah. No trace of the boy they had been desperately trying to protect. He was gone. The only clue left behind was a single, folded letter resting on the pillow. Sharon's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper, her heart sinking with every word she read. "Thank you for taking care of me. But I need to find the answers on my own. I need to go where I can find peace, where I can figure out who I really am. I'm going after the people who did this to me, starting with Audra. I won't rest until I have my revenge." The letter was brief but damning. Noah was gone, and worse, he was setting out on a dangerous path of vengeance. Sharon's heart shattered as she read the words over and over, trying to make sense of them. How could he leave like this? How could he walk away from them, from the safety and love they had tried to give him? Nick stood beside her, his face pale and stricken with disbelief. "We have to find him," he said, his voice hoarse. "We can't let him go after Audra. It's not him. He's not thinking clearly. He's still in pain, Sharon." But Sharon could barely speak through the lump in her throat. She knew they couldn't stop him now. Noah had already made up his mind, and there was nothing they could do to turn him back. The question now wasn't how they would stop him, but how they would pick up the pieces of their broken family when he returned, if he ever did. With Noah gone and a dark path ahead of him, Sharon and Nick were left behind in the aftermath, grieving not just the son they had lost, but the person he was about to become. The guilt gnawed at Sharon's insides as she wondered if there was more they could have done, if they had missed some vital clue that could have kept him from walking this dangerous road. And as for Noah? His journey had only just begun. Driven by a thirst for revenge, he would not stop until he had confronted those who had wronged him. What he would find, and whether he could live with the consequences of his choices, was still to be seen. But for now, all that was certain was the pain he carried with him, and the darkness he was willingly walking into. Noah's disappearance, a web of confusion, pain, and suspicion. The morning Noah awoke in the hospital was unlike any other. It wasn't the first time he had been in such a place, but this time, everything was different. The sterile scent of antiseptic, the soft hum of machines, and the distant murmur of voices outside the room felt alien. His eyes fluttered open, and for a brief moment, there was a strange sense of calm. But as he took in his surroundings, the calm quickly faded into confusion. He didn't recognize the faces standing by his bed, nor did he recognize the name being called by the woman standing at his side. "Noah, honey, it's me, Sharon. Your mom." The words should have meant something to him, but they didn't. They should have sparked a sense of familiarity, a connection to the woman standing before him, yet there was nothing. His mind was a void, a blank canvas, and no matter how hard he tried to focus, nothing came to him. The woman who called herself his mother appeared familiar, but that didn't seem to matter when he couldn't remember who he was or who she was. The discomfort was palpable, the tension in his chest suffocating. Sharon's voice wavered with a mix of love and worry as she tried to reassure him, but it felt so far removed from what Noah could grasp. "You've been through a lot. We're just happy you're awake." But Noah wasn't happy to be awake. He was terrified. His world was a blur, and Sharon's words, though kind, only added to the growing unease that he couldn't shake off. He felt trapped, suffocated by his own confusion, by the weight of not knowing who he was, where he came from, or who these people in his life really were. Nick, standing just behind Sharon, tried to offer his support, but his words didn't register either. "We're here for you, Noah. We've always been here." The phrase, meant to comfort, only deepened the chasm in Noah's heart. They weren't his parents, not really. He couldn't even remember what it felt like to be a part of this family. Days passed, and Noah's condition improved physically, but emotionally, he was drifting further away. His memories, once so clear, were like a distant dream that slipped further from his grasp. He could no longer recall moments with Sharon or Nick, the people who claimed to be his family, nor could he remember the life he once led. The only thing he could hold on to was the nagging sensation that something was off. Something was wrong. Then there was Sienna. Sienna's visits to Noah's hospital room were strange. She wasn't family, but she acted as if she had a deep connection with him. Every time she arrived, there was an air of mystery about her. She was persistent, always speaking to Noah in hushed tones, and when Sharon and Nick weren't looking, she would exchange cryptic words with the doctors, sometimes even suggesting different treatment options or questioning certain decisions. What was her involvement in all this? Why was she so invested in Noah's recovery, and why did she always seem to know just what to say to calm him, even when he couldn't remember her? For Noah, the only thing that felt real was the dark sense of disconnect he experienced with every passing moment. He was lost, adrift in a world that didn't seem to make sense anymore. He was like a stranger in his own life. But then, something shifted. One morning, when Sharon and Nick arrived to see him, they found the hospital room empty. There was no sign of Noah. His bed was made, his personal belongings gone. The panic set in immediately. Sharon's heart dropped to her stomach, and Nick's anger surged. They searched the room, but there was nothing left but a letter, folded neatly on Noah's pillow. The letter was short, almost to the point of being cold, but it was clear. Noah had left. He thanked them for their care, but it was evident from the words that he had made up his mind. The letter read, "Thank you for everything. But I need to find my own answers. I'm going to search for the truth and find the people responsible for what happened to me, starting with Audra." Sharon's heart shattered as she read those words, unable to process the full weight of what they meant. Find the truth, find the people responsible. What truth was he referring to? What had happened to him that made him want to leave, to pursue revenge against someone named Audra? The questions swirled in her mind, but they only deepened her fear. Was he going to do something dangerous? Could he even be trusted, given his memory loss? Nick, standing behind Sharon, was already seething with anger. He couldn't believe Noah had left, not after everything they had done for him. He knew his son was hurting, but this? This was reckless. "We need to find him," Nick muttered through clenched teeth. "I'm going to find Sienna. She knows something. She's been hiding something from us." Nick's suspicion toward Sienna had been growing for some time now. There was something about her visits to Noah that didn't sit right with him. Her actions were too calculated, too deliberate. She acted like someone who knew more than she was letting on, someone who might be withholding the truth. The idea that Sienna was somehow involved in Noah's disappearance was a thought that gnawed at Nick's mind. What if she had taken Noah, manipulated him into running away, or worse, kept him from his family for some hidden agenda? But Sienna's behavior remained elusive. When Nick finally confronted her, demanding answers, she only gave vague responses, never directly addressing the growing tension between them. Her words were always carefully measured, her eyes never meeting his with full transparency. Was she hiding Noah, or was she just as lost as they were? As Nick dug deeper, the more frustrated he became. He couldn't shake the feeling that Sienna knew more than she was letting on, but what could she possibly gain by keeping Noah from them? Was she using Noah's memory loss to manipulate him into doing something he wouldn't have done otherwise? Was she part of something bigger, something darker? Meanwhile, Noah's journey continued, though he had no clear destination. He was still recovering from the physical trauma of his accident, but now, with each passing day, his mind became more focused on the people who had wronged him, on the forces that had stripped him of his memories and his life. His anger was palpable, his thirst for revenge consuming him. Audra was at the center of it all. He didn't remember much about her, but he knew she had played a part in his downfall. And that was enough to fuel his determination. As Noah wandered, lost in a fog of confusion and rage, Sharon and Nick were left to pick up the pieces. The question that haunted them both was simple yet impossible to answer: where was Noah? But perhaps more importantly, who was he now? Sharon cried herself to sleep every night, praying that somehow Noah would return to them. She believed that, with time, his memory would return, that he would remember them and they could begin to heal. But she knew the journey ahead would not be easy, and the road to redemption, for all of them, was a long and painful one. Nick, on the other hand, was consumed by his anger and frustration. The uncertainty of where Noah had gone, the fear that he was in danger, gnawed at his insides. But he wasn't ready to give up on his son, not yet. He would find Noah, no matter what it took. If Sienna was involved, he would uncover the truth, even if it meant going to extreme lengths to do so. And so, the story of Noah's disappearance unfolded like a twisted puzzle, one that Sharon, Nick, and even Sienna had no choice but to solve. But one thing was certain: this was only the beginning. The answers they sought would lead them into a world of hidden secrets, broken relationships, and dark revelations. The search for Noah was just the first chapter of a far greater and more dangerous story, one that none of them were prepared for.